here has seen a Playgirl Centerfold social media androided up, muscle to the nines, carnivore advocate lately? Guys, right? Carnivore is like the thing now. You know, I used to have straight hair before I decided to give this talk because it's like jumping in Alice's rabbit hole with alcohol policy to try and figure this out. Okay? So I listen to those guys, you know, Chafee, et cetera, and they are full of opinion and testosterone. There's a lot of advocates on there that are like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And we just throw out these facts as if they're facts. They just throw out stuff as if it's science. Yeah, and then you go, okay, well, I'm going to do a talk on researching this. And that didn't take that long because there's like no research in the modern era about carnivore. By the way, my talk is on researching extreme diets, but I decided to focus on carnivore because it's hot, first of all. And my husband's a big fat old carnivore. And so I have some personal history of the war between a carnivore and a non-carnivore in my home. But mostly because a lot of people come in and ask us questions about this. Is this safe? Will this work for me? And we have nothing to give them, right? We have nothing. So, so I thought I'd help us all out with that. There's one modern study, one real study, study by Harvard. And it is a big old symptom survey. That's all it is. The symptom survey of 2,000 self-selected carnivores who went on the diet, usually for extreme health conditions like severe diabetes. And they felt pushed into it because they had no other treatment choices. And they were astoundingly successful. 100% of the diabetes patients that went on this diet for more than 6 months got off or reduced their medications. 100% of 2,000, mostly male, upper middle class, educated, self-selected carnivores. That's pretty huge, right? But there's a couple problems with that study. One, it's a self-selected study, and where did they get their patient population? Off of Reddit. Okay? These expensive internet groups that funnel people that are into that thing. It's like a cult. You funnel people into that thing that are into it. If you have questions or concerns about it, they bounce your butt right out with their little group. So what that study can tell us is, if the carnivore diet works for you, it's going to really work for you. Okay? And if it doesn't, get out of our group. That's all it tells us. So that's all we have that I can find in the modern research. And by the way, this is an ongoing project of mine. So if anybody has any data or anything to say about this that contradicts or adds to what I'm saying, please email me. The email's in the notes. And I would love your input. Because I did this for a long time, and I have some conclusions, but I have some confusions. Okay? So that's what we know about the modern research. That didn't take long, did it? So, that's not going to fill up 20 minutes of a talk. So what are we going to do? That thing that I do when there's nothing to talk about, which is I jumped to a paradigm, which is fun. So I started looking at anthropological research and archaeological research, and came at it with the question of, what are we evolved to? What are we designed as a species to eat? What have we been eating since we were we? And what did we eat before we were we? And what did we eat before we were we? So I went back like 55 million years. And here's what I found. It's so cool, you guys. This is just such a cool thing. For 2 million years prior to our current era, the Pliocene era, I had to look up how to pronounce that. Pliocene, okay. For 2 million years, we were big fat carnivores, like obligate carnivores, like scavenger-ass carnivores, okay? 2 million years before we were Homo sapiens. We've been Homo sapiens around, 300,000, give or take, and we've been carnivores all of that time too, until the Ice Age, okay? Until about 12,800 years ago, the planet rapidly changed. There was a flood, Noah, all this stuff. We had a huge change in our environment. Okay, a lot of change. Hello. And we lost all the megafauna except for the moose, right? So we used to eat mammals. There's research in here. You guys can look it up. It's a party. But that's what it's saying. And that's kind of shocking, right? Because I was a vegan for a decade, and I was a very dedicated vegan. And for me to read this, I was like, I don't want to tell them this. I don't want to know this. But truth is truth. So I'm going to tell you the truth as we currently know it. Okay? But there's adaptations. Don't lose your crap yet. Okay, hang in there. Okay. So for 2 million years, carnivores. Isotopic data shows this pretty clearly. And this is new data the last 4 or 5 years. in the field. Before that, we had different opinions because we were extrapolating our hunter-gatherer data, which was diligently collected all over the world. Weston Price is a prime example of that. You guys know Weston Price's work. You got to read Weston Price if you want to do any nutritional anything. Okay. So from 12,800 to now, we're in something called the Neolithic Revolution. Right? So what happens during a revolution? Rapid change, rapid change, rapid adaptation, die off of those that cannot make it. Okay, so we have a carnivore adaptive body. There's 37 different markers in your body right now that match a wolf more than a sheep. So you can look that up in there, but don't do it while I'm talking. That's boring. You can do it later. Now, the vegan people will come up with a long list of multiple adaptations of why we are like herbivores. So you can Google this. How are humans like herbivores? Millions of websites. Here's how we're like herbivores. And some of that stuff directly contradicts the current research on how we look like carnivores. Some of it doesn't. So we're this weird mishmash of adaptive strategies from different eras when our food supply changed. That's the down low. Okay. Because before the Pliocene era, we were little monkeys in little trees. And right here, what did we eat? We eat fruit. We eat plants. So we have this old imprint of being these little fruit-eating creatures for a long time. Then we have this sudden dramatic branch off of our family tree. And I'm just going to talk for 1 second about one of the 37 markers, which is pH. Who here knows what a normal healthy, and I'm going to put a big pin in healthy, the normal healthy preprandial gut pH is in the stomach of a Homo sapiens. May throw a number out. 3. Somebody said 3. Wrong. Now, we are 1.5. According to, in here, it's so bizarre. We have the same type of pH as a white-winged vulture. Right? We're in that whole part. White-winged vulture. So what does that mean? We are adapted not only to eat meat, but to eat nasty, disgusting, rotted meat on the side of the road. What do you think dogs eat? Dog. 4. Preprandial gut pH of a dog is 4. In that range. Cat, 3. So we are more adapted to eat that can of Alpo than our dog or cat is. From this one frame. Okay, it's one frame. Right. So one thing I do with every patient now that I learn this is I make them do a stomach acid challenge. I will not prescribe them supplements. I will not give them a diet until I know if they can digest that diet. And you would be amazed, people of all ages fail my stomach acid challenge and have to do a gut rehab protocol. So I run everybody through that before I let them take a single supplement, because compliance with your protocol is going to crash if your patients can't digest what you're suggesting to them, right? So if you guys want my stomach acid handout, how to do that, I walk people through that, just email me. I didn't put it in here, it's a little bit long, but I was happy to email it to anyone who wants to use it. You can use it, just use it, because it helps so much. So anyway, so we are big old vultures. We're vultures. What's the hormones mean? Right? What? Okay, here's our modern research. One study. Okay, let me just say that I'm doing a study because this pissed me off, so I had no data. So our clinic is doing a study on nutritional adequacy of extreme diets, and I need subjects, okay? Because you want to talk about another reason I used to way straighter. It is incredibly frustrating to try and run a research study without funding in your own clinic while you're running a practice. So I was supposed to have this done and present the results to you guys today, and it's 20% done. So I'll give you 20% of my results. We use cell science systems, cellular micronutrient array test. It's an amazing test, you guys. It checks for functional nutritional adequacy of 109 nutritional markers in the living cells of the patient. It's a wonderful test. The description of it is in there. So they donated tests to us. Thank you. And we are dividing the test between carnivores who've been carnivore for 6 months, people that are eating the myplate.gov American diet, not the standard American diet. We're going for the healthy ideal, but they're actually trying to eat the myplate.gov. You guys look at that diet. Okay, but people try to do that. And vegans. We're looking at Blue Zone Mediterranean diet is our standard for this branch of our study, which if you look at who copyrighted the Blue Zone's term, they made it into a vegan diet, which kind of annoys me, but There's a really great website that describes that diet, so it's easy to follow. So if you guys have patients who've been on any of those diets for 6 months or more without taking supplements, we need them. Because why? Let me talk for a minute about who does these extreme diets. Who does extreme diets? Extreme people do extreme diets, right? Okay. So why are they extreme? Either they have OCD, okay, or they are sicker than sick. And all of our lovely suggestions have failed them. Their microbiome is beyond, right? Sometimes they have the perception that they just need to clean out whatever microbiome they have and replace it with another one. And let me just point out, this is a conceptual thought. Carnivores have microbiomes as well, okay? It's not just herbivores that have microbiomes. So who are we to say that a carnivore microbiome is not also potentially functionally adequate for a human being? Because we don't even know what human beings really are, right? So let's just take a step back and take a bigger view of the microbiome, perhaps. Anyway, so that's what our study does. So if you have anyone that is not taking supplements, please send them to us. We're allowing electrolytes because carnivores tend to need electrolytes, so we're waiving that part. But thank you in advance. Okay, so back to the story. Okay, so we've got the Neolithic Revolution, which is what we're living through now. We've got the Pliocene era when we were big old carnivores, and we got before that. I'm just going to take all of time and put it here. Before that, we were some kind of adaptive fruitarian herbivores. Okay, and our gut pHs reflect that. The gut pH of an arboreal monkey now, if you look at that, like howler one, let's just say, their pH is around 5.5 of their preprandial gut pH, which is pretty much about the pH of a soft ripe fig, right? And there's one study, this is kind of a weird study, of one chimpanzee where they took her stomach acid and her preprandial stomach pH was 7. Right? Water. So is she an unhealthy, because I have plenty of patients who come in with stomach pH of 7, right? I wouldn't call them healthy. Is she a healthy chimpanzee? I don't know. But the point is that we have taken a very strong diversion from the rest of our tree to do this carnivore thing. And why do we do it? Because we have megafauna. Okay, so let's go back to the third type of research. So we've got our modern research, which is me and nothing, for one study. We've got anthropology, which I think we covered pretty good. And we've got actual human studies. So to go back to the real science, which is the pre-big pharma paid science, I have to go back in time. And so the studies I'm going to talk to you about now all happened around 1900 to 1940, which was definitely a golden age of science. And by the way, let me put out a plea to all of you to please look at the International Foundation for Nutrition now, ifnh.org, because they are the keepers and the archivers of this golden age of science before Big Pharma took over our scientific research money. And a lot of their research looks at nutrition because they didn't have any drugs back then. So they have this amazing archive of science and literature and books about nutrition that are golden. So I strongly encourage you all to just at least join, be members, and take advantage of their resources. And I don't think I listed it here, that's what I'm telling you. Okay, so if we go back to the turn of the century, we find some really neat studies because there was a fascination with the Eskimo at that time, right? There were these explorers that went up and spent years with the Eskimos and lived their lifestyle and came back. And there were these two explorers that went and spent a year with the Eskimos, and they lived on an all-meat diet. That's what Eskimos. And by the way, they prefer the term Inuit. So I'm using the term Eskimo because that's what the study actually written down, just to know that they are the Inuit people. So the Inuit are still, if they're living their traditional lifestyle, eating an almost 100% carnivore diet. So we have these several studies of the Eskimos, and we have these researchers that went and spent a year with them, and then came back and told people on the East Coast, Bostonites, we lived on meat for a year, and nobody believed them. So they said, we're going to prove it. So they said, fine. So they checked themselves into a hospital and were monitored by doctors for a year, and were given nothing but meat for an entire year, and their health was monitored. And at the end of the year, their health parameters were the same or better than when they went into the hospital. That's a pretty dramatic, pretty interesting study of white, middle, but upper class men. Let me just flag that. This is men. Okay. So that was pretty amazing. So there was some proof out there, yes, humans, modern humans, not just Inuit people, can live on this diet. However, when they were discharged from this study and went back to eating plant foods, their blood sugars went crazy. So there's a second, smaller, not as well-cited study showing that if you have adapted yourself, probably this has to do with microbiome, if you adapted yourself to this carnivorous diet, and then you go back to eating a plant-based diet, you can have insulin resistance issues. So why? So let's go back to the Inuit studies for a minute. There's just two really interesting things about the Inuit study. One of them is that the people assume, and there are all these assumptions about the ketogenic diet. So I'm going to talk about keto for a minute. I'm going to step on some toes, I think, because people throw around a lot of statements about the ketogenic diet being natural, all animals are keto, even cows are keto. Have you guys heard this stuff on social media? No? Okay. There seems to be a lot more talk about the health, safety, and naturalness of a long-term ketogenic diet than there is research. There's a ton of research coming out showing that short and moderate-term ketogenic diets do a lot of amazing things for modern humans. And I think a lot of that has to do with the damage to our insulin receptors that we're undergoing. But the Eskimos and the Inuit were not ketogenic. Even though they're eating 100% carnivore, even though they are stripping whale blubber off carcasses and eating it raw, which they do, okay, they were not ketogenic. So there was this huge study where they tested these Inuit people, and they found that none of them were in ketosis, and they couldn't seem to get them into ketosis. They couldn't figure out why. So they took a bunch of Inuit and they starved them, put them in rooms with no food at all, and waited till they could see if they could become ketogenic. And it took 8 days on average for the average Inuit person to go into ketosis. So if any of you ever done ketogenic diet, please try it. Okay, how long did it take you to go into ketosis? 1 day on average, right? 1 to maybe 3 days if you're a diehard. Yeah, 8 days. So what does that tell us? Okay, so these people, we think, my theory is that they are, if we take humans over here in the Neolithic Revolution, okay, and let's imagine that we're all on this bell curve somewhere in terms of adaptation to our new post-mammoth availability omnivorous diet. So some of us, we're all somewhere in here. These guys are in the upper 5%, right? They're the outliers, and they are the remnant of the Pliocene food supply. They are still eating what's left of the megafauna. So we know they did that. We don't know if a human in someone who's adapted to this part of the bell curve or this part of the bell curve could successfully do that. There's no proof. There's no saying that that's even possible. Okay. So I have lived with an Alaskan mountain man who grew up eating the remnants of our megafauna for the last decade. And I can tell you that the history in these research papers of what these people ate is still accurate to this day because he lived with them and he ate with them and he saw that they do eat caribou and buffalo and moose and whale blubber and seal. And that when they do that as a group, they maintain a vital lifestyle. The minute they go off of that and have carbs, all bets are off. So there is some back to the take home from this. So you guys all get the carnivore thing, like how we were carnivores. There's no denying that. And let me go back to who does carnivore. Like who's here's had a carnivore come into their office? Who's coming? Yeah, right? See, it's community. All of us, okay? And what do you say to them? You don't know, right? Because so what you say is, I don't know. Nobody knows. Let's just get that on the table. I'm not going to pretend like I know something I don't know, and I'm not going to come at you with an agenda, right, of a program, because we have to admit what we don't know. If we don't do that, we lose their rapport, because their lived experience is so intense. By the time someone makes that dietary choice, especially women that come in on the carnivore diet, if you try to tell them, oh, let's put some plants back, they're going to rip the face off. I'm telling you, because they got all that, the meat juice in them, man. Be careful. Be really careful. Okay. You can't tell them, you don't know. Our science has not caught up with this bell curve concept. You guys get what I'm saying? Like, unfortunately, I'm kind of like right here, and Don is kind of like right here. So we eat two different meals, right? He's going to stand over the sink and rip into a steak. Like, literally, he doesn't sit down unless I make him. Okay, that's carnivore. And I'm over here mixing my salad dressing, right? So, and we live that way. So you have to meet them where they are. And part of that is saying, we have the science now that shows that there is a history of carnivorous adaptation, and you may be somewhere on this spectrum of adaptation that is not allowing you to eat the plants that we know are otherwise good for you. That's how I would say it. Okay. So there's a clinical point to this. There's some clinical stuff in the back. So the take home is there's no one single diet. But we don't want to lose these people by pushing our agenda onto them. And that's a tough one because that gets into sustainability and climate change and food resources and the big P word, which is the very long four-letter word that no human wants to talk about, which is population, right? Because if some of our patients need to be carnivores for some length of time of their lifespan, how do we support those people's health? We're just going to let them die because we all want to eat tofu because we want to save the planet, right? These are huge, huge topics. And also the sustainability of the animals themselves and how they're raised, by agriculture, and all these awful, awful, awful things come out of implications of what it's saying. So I don't have time to address that. That is a talk that we should have as a species. We should be having this talk. But I'm just going to take that big fun little, I'm going to put it over here, and I'm not going to look at it anymore. Because otherwise, how do I have this conversation with you, right? So how do we support these extreme dieters that come in? And there's stuff in here also about vegan diet and ketogenic diet and paleo diet, so it's in the notes. You can read about it. One thing is to talk to them about nutrients. One thing is to test them, okay? And that's one reason I chose the cellular micronutrient array, because it is a very good snapshot of what vitamins and minerals and amino acids are they actually absorbing from their diet, what's actually getting into their red and white blood cells, and what's actually being used. And I'll tell you the results of our study so far. Our carnivores are actually doing pretty well compared to our vegans and our average Americans. They're on par or higher in their nutrient intake. They are about 80 to 90% adequate in 109 vitamins and minerals. So that's pretty amazing. So with this test, why I love this test is you can take it and you go, okay, of the 5 million supplements I could recommend to you, you really need these 4, right? So what do you think that does to compliance? Right, goes way up. I can see my test, I see what I need. Here's the product you say I need. I'm going to take it. Right, so that right there is worth $200 testing, which is how much the test costs. What else can we do for them? Here's what I think is happening with our carnivores, or people that need carnivore, because if you think about the SIBO intro diet, just use the SIBO intro diet. Okay, the SIBO intro diet is 100% carnivore. It's not spoken of that way, it's not languaged that way, but what's on that diet? It's 1 to 3 weeks of hamburger patties and chicken broth and rinsed cottage cheese. That's what that diet is. And that intro diet has taken some of my messed up, most damaged, most inflamed, gut distressed, belly out to ear people and flattened their belly and given them the will to live in a week or 2 sometimes. It's dramatic. And I don't want them to stay on that. But I have used that as a reset diet for gut inflammation for years. And I didn't think of it. Elaine Gottschall thought of it. Thank you, Elaine. And also the GAPS diet, which is a version of that, is also ipso facto a carnivore diet. So clinically, or at least I have been using these for years, but I didn't think of them as carnivore exactly. I thought of them as I have to get all the lectins and the inflammatory salicylates and all the hormetic things that are in plants are normally tonifying to a healthy gut wall. What I think is happening is we're losing the ability to benefit from hormesis if the gut becomes too inflamed. So there's a tipping point at which the gut gets so damaged that these normally tonifying things that would be helpful for the gut now are damaging to the gut. So these people are benefiting from a blank out or a reset or a washout period. And so if we have them over here, let's say they're normally someone who would be top of the bell curve, nice omnivore, huge broad-based diet. Now they get into a moldy house. Okay, now they've taken a ton of antibiotics. And now they have fungal overgrowth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Every time we have a damaging thing, we lose some adaptability, right? So think about it that this omnivorous adaptation strategy we have is a blink of an eye in terms of the 300,000 years we've been human and becoming more human. It's a blink of an eye. It's a tiny veneer. It's a necessary adaptation to the way our world is going, but it's fragile. And that's what we're seeing. So let's say they get damaged and they should be here. And this happened to me. I'm a pretty middle-class omnivore, right? Gut damage, mold, all of a sudden, every plant on the planet is blowing me up. Okay, so what do I have to do? I have to trek over here to Dawn's side of the world, And how all of a sudden I'm eating, chicken broth and turkey broth and fish and all this stuff. And I'm like, I hate this. But it's calming down that inflammation, right? And then lo and behold, we do all the great stuff that we do while we're healing. And now I can go back over here, and now I can eat the diet that my body's actually genetically designed to eat. But if I, go and live in a mold damaged building again or have some kind of crisis, I might have to go back over here. So if we look at this as a functional tool, knowing what we know now about our evolution, we look at it as a functional tool that's a sliding scale. We don't lose rapport with these people that need to do this. And we don't give them the feeling that they're condemned to just eat steak. Because especially the women that come in on this diet, they don't like this diet. They've been on it more than 6 months. They are pissed. They're like, help me eat something that's steak. Like, really few of them actually talk to them want to stay on it, right? So this is how we can approach them and how we can talk to them about how to move through this while respecting them, right? So that's what I do with them. If you look at the last part, we have a couple pages on caring for vegans and caring for carnivores, which goes through labs and adaptations. And the one thing I'm not going to tell you is that carnivores have to intermittent fast. If they don't intermittent fast, I'm thinking cancer rates are going to skyrocket. If you're going to eat meat, sometimes you're not going to catch that meat and you're going to be hungry. Okay, so don't let them eat every day because they'll die. And number two, rebound hypoglycemia, y'all. This is a big deal. If you have someone keto adapted or carnivore adapted in with our modern food supply, which is ketogenic, the old type diets were not ketogenic because they ate putrefying meat. That's why our pH is so low in our stomach. The modern ketogenic diet is carnivore diet is ketogenic. So if someone's keto adapted and they suddenly eat a bunch of carbs, their heart could blow, right? So do you guys all know about that? So if you're going to have someone cheat on that diet, have them take exogenous ketones so their heart doesn't get suddenly ischemic and have no nutrients and die. Okay, and that's on page 19. Okay, so just don't kill people's hearts and check the thyroid, especially in women. Done.